South Beach, Miami. They beat rival UF 26-7, but it felt a little bit more dominating than even the final score. What's the recruiting impact of beating rival Florida Gators?
Well, another box checked for the Miami Hurricanes here with this football season and recruiting cycle, as there's certainly a lot of intrigue around the Hurricanes right now, as they look like a team that's ready to compete for the national championship this year, up to number 2 in the AP poll, number 6 in the coaches poll. They're definitely hoping that they see an undefeated Florida State in 2 weeks in Tallahassee. The Seminoles have to take on UVA in Charlottesville on Friday night before the big in-state showdown between Miami and Florida State. But this just feels different. This Hurricanes team feels a little different than last year's team that started out 9-0. I think they're more physical, more talented. Obviously, they lost Cam Ward, but brought in Carson Beck, the biggest target out of the highest-ranked player out of the transfer portal, to replace Cam Ward. And recruits on campus. They've had elite players at all 3 home games and multiple return trips for a lot of these guys. So they're playing well in front of the nation's best. Some of these guys committed elsewhere, guys that are happy with their current commitments. But 2 months to go in the season, Miami's certainly showing that they're playing at a championship level right now. They just got to keep it going in the important months, October, and then obviously, even more importantly, November.
Yeah. On Saturday night's show, Steve, you asked me if I thought Miami Hurricanes were a national title contender, or maybe you asked if I thought they could win the national title. But at the time, I wasn't quite sure. But after looking back at this week's games, nobody's playing perfect football out there. And the Miami Hurricanes, they might be playing the most physical football when it comes to offensive line, defensive line. And I think that's just a testament to what Mario Cristobal's trying to do. Of course, he got Cam Ward in last year, number 1 overall pick, but I don't think this roster was set up exactly the way he wanted, whereas this year I feel like it's more to his liking. Do you see that? Well,
obviously his fingerprints are all over this roster and his culture and the way that they've built this thing up at Miami. Coach Cristobal has always been known as a big game coach, having his teams ready to play the best opponents year in and year out. But he's an old offensive line guy, old school, blue collar, wants his football teams to be dominant in the trenches on both sides of the football, pours a lot into the offensive line. Obviously, with offensive line coach Alex Mirabal, they have great chemistry, do a great job together. But the defensive line, being deep, having guys that can rotate in and out, difference makers, where they can play 100 miles an hour the whole game. I think he's also done a good job of hiring coordinators and assistant coaches to bring the best out of his players. And he's a player's coach. I mean, he loves being around his guys. He lives in that football facility. I'd be surprised if there's a head coach in college football that spends more time in the football facility. I think he puts in John Gruden hours with how much time he spends in that Miami football facility. And he really wants to win. I mean, there's a lot of pride. He played at Miami. And he wants to restore the Hurricanes to what they were. He talks about it all the time. He's got a lot of former alum on the sidelines that support him and back him. He's got a lot of alum working for him, and it means a lot to him. It's not just a job. He is the U. He is Miami. He put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that program as a player. And now as a coach, he's very demanding on himself, on his staff, and on his players. And this is a team that takes on the personality of their head coach. I mean, this is a physical, hard-nosed football team. You feel them when you play against them. Notre Dame and Florida have good offensive lines. Miami's defensive line got after them, beat those guys up, and dominated. Notre Dame played in the national title game the year before. One of their calling cards is just how physical and how hard they play. Miami was more ready to play than them in week 1 and out hit the Irish. And so Miami, another big opportunity on the road at Florida State. They got a bye week, then Florida State, then another bye week, and they're hoping that they see an undefeated Seminoles team in 2 weeks.
All right, let's dig into some of this recruiting intel coming out of Miami from the weekend. One of the major themes of the weekend was flip targets on campus. I mean, you had Anthony Tank Jones, Calvin Russell. There was a number of guys there, including a Gator commitment. I mean, you had guys committed to programs all over the country. So coming out of here, who are you focused on when it comes to potential Miami flip targets?
Well, those names, obviously Anthony Tank Jones, Justice Fitzpatrick, and Tyreek Green committed to Georgia. Yeah. Nolan Wilson's a Bama commit. Calvin Russell to Syracuse, Marquise Daniels, the Florida commit that you mentioned, a wide receiver, to Darius Hughes, a verbal to Florida State. I think these guys are happy with their current commitments to where they're going. But for Miami, it's just keeping them warm, keeping the dialogue going, getting another bite at the apple, having them on their sidelines, having them at the game, having them rub elbows with the likes of Michael Irvin, maybe getting them back in the football facility, sitting down, talking ball with them, getting them around the players again. Just that bite at the apple. You don't know where it's going to take you. I mean, a lot of these guys are going to be hard to flip, particularly in the modern recruiting era. But how I envision it maybe happening is Miami goes on a run, they win the ACC, and then they're going to make some final pitches to some of these guys. And I talked to Jackson Cantwell, the jewel of Miami's class, after the game, and on Sunday, he said that he thought that Miami would flip a guy or two, and so that is the expectation. Who's it going to be? It's too early to say. But these kids are keeping Miami warm, and Miami just likes being alive right now. They just want to keep playing well. The excitement around Hard Rock Stadium is something we haven't seen in a long time. And we know that Miami can win modern recruitment. So we'll see what it looks like when it gets to the end. You got other guys like James J.J. Johnson committed to Texas, Derek Cooper committed to Texas out there. So there's a lot of guys committed elsewhere that Miami remains in conversation with. An uncommitted prospect that Miami's in a good spot for is Fred Saintius. He's a massive defensive lineman from in-state. He's been at every Miami game this year. I think Miami's the one to beat. Now Florida State's involved, so big game in 2 weeks maybe. Michigan State's involved, but Miami looks like the one to beat for the Naples product there. And then it was an unbelievable group of 2027s that were at the game. I think the first two to highlight are 5-star offensive tackle Mark Matthews and 5-star edge rusher David DJ Jacobs. We talked about it at the top of the segment. Miami, trench warfare, being tough and dynamic at the point of attack is a major priority. Mark Matthews and David DJ Jacobs, I think if Miami was drafting players in 2027, they would draft one of those guys one and then trade up to get the other. And so those guys are as important as anybody out there for them. Mark Matthews has been to a couple games. He likes certainly what Coach Cristobal has done historically, developing offensive linemen, proximity to home, being at Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas. And then David DJ Jacobs is from the Peach State. His dad played at Georgia, but I talked to his dad this week, David, and he said, well, who knows if Georgia's right for my kids? Miami, his godfather's Coach John Richt, or Coach Mark Richt, excuse me. Coach Mark Richt is his godfather, and there's a lot of love for Miami. He's been to 2 Miami games this year already, and I talked to the younger Jacobs after the game, and he just loved how they kept fighting and came out with the victory, and how the defensive line gets so much pressure on the quarterback. It's a scheme he could see himself really thriving in. So these are 2 guys Miami would love to land. They had great wide receivers on campus. They made a move with Manchin Sales from Indianapolis over the weekend. He's someone that I could see them being in it till the end for moving forward. He had a fantastic 2-day visit on campus. The number 2 running back in the country, Tyson Robinson, loved his experience out of Mississippi. So elite guys in 2027. And then it's hard to imagine Miami not getting like quarterback Neiman Lawrence, local kid, Amir Sears, top-ranked corner in 2028. They're already building such a foundation with these elite 2028s with how they played last year and are building off it this year.
All right, Miami fans, talk to us. Had to be an exciting time for recruits in Hard Rock on Saturday night. Talk about your favorite flip target. Who do you want to see the Canes land before it's all said and done? Let us know. Comment section below.